It began with a vote inside the Grand Council chamber, a place built to decide the fate of stars, where 1,000 alien voices echoed beneath a ceiling of glass and light, where pride spoke louder than reason, and fear hid behind politics. For centuries, the galaxy had watched humanity grow in silence, a young race that had risen from a single blue world and reached the stars faster than any species before them. The Council had feared them once, long ago, when humans were wild and unpredictable, when their ships burned brighter and their soldiers fought with the kind of madness only desperation could create. But time dulled memory, and arrogance replaced caution. Now, in that chamber of marble and gold, they mistook humanity's silence for surrender. "They have gone quiet," said one delegate, his silver skin reflecting the chamber lights. "They no longer expand, they no longer challenge, perhaps they have learned their place." A wave of laughter followed. They believed the Terrans had become docile, content with their small corner of space. But far away, beyond the Council's reach, humanity's silence had not been peace. It had been patience. When the motion was called, it passed with thunderous approval. The High Speaker of the Galactic Council raised his translucent hand and declared, "By the will of the United Species, we shall dismantle the Terran fleets and ensure their compliance with the Galactic Code. Earth will kneel to order." The hall erupted with applause, a sound like a storm of arrogance. None of them saw the quiet exchange between two aides in the back, both from minor worlds that traded secretly with the Terrans. One leaned close and whispered, "They don't know what they're doing." The other replied softly, "No one ever does, until it's too late." Across the chamber, the vote numbers burned into the air. Every major power aligned against one small world at the edge of the Milky Way. They called it an enforcement operation, a show of strength. But everyone knew what it really was: war. Messages traveled faster than light across the stars, carrying orders of mobilization. Fleets gathered, weapons primed, commanders boasting of how quickly the humans would surrender. Reports filled the Council's news channels. Human colonies defenseless, Terran navy outdated, Earth system poorly fortified. "It will be over before it begins," said Admiral Zavran of the Hecate Armada, his mandibles twitching in amusement. "The humans have forgotten war." But on the other side of the galaxy, deep within the Terran Union Command network, someone else was already reading that statement before it was even broadcast. Hidden satellites older than the Council itself monitored every word, every movement, every signal. In a dark room beneath the surface of Mars, surrounded by screens and silence, a human officer whispered to her superior, "They voted." The answer came calmly, "We expected they would. Activate Protocol Black Dawn." The officer nodded. Across the Terran colonies, lights flickered, dormant factories came alive, and fleets that hadn't moved in a century began to awaken. Humanity didn't panic, didn't speak, didn't protest. They simply began to move. The Council's arrogance grew in the following days. They broadcast their declaration of war publicly, expecting fear, expecting surrender. The statement reached every corner of the galaxy. The Terran Union has violated interstellar order. By decree of the Council, their fleets will be dismantled, their systems placed under supervision. On distant worlds, civilians cheered. Finally, those savages will be tamed, one alien journalist said, his face glowing on galactic holoscreens. The Council called it Operation Dawnlight, a name chosen to symbolize renewal. But for the humans who intercepted that broadcast, it meant something else entirely. They remembered the ancient wars, the betrayals, the treaties broken under the Council's flag. For them, Dawnlight was not renewal. It was the final sunrise before darkness. On Earth, the sky was quiet. The oceans shimmered, calm and blue. Cities stretched across continents, towers reaching into clouds, but none of the usual noise filled the air. No parades, no speeches, no declarations. Humanity's leaders met in silence inside the Terran Defense Command, a fortress buried under miles of steel and memory. At the center sat the Chancellor, an old man whose eyes had seen too many wars. "They've voted," said his aide. "I know," the Chancellor replied. "And?" asked another. "We do nothing," he said. "Not yet." Around the table, officers exchanged confused glances. One finally spoke. "Sir, the Council is mobilizing 5,000 ships. If we wait, they'll reach us before." The Chancellor raised his hand, silencing him. "Let them come," he said softly. "We've been waiting for this longer than they've been alive." In the dim light of that command chamber, the walls pulsed with faint blue light, each pulse synchronized with the heartbeat of the planet's defense grid. Humanity's silence wasn't hesitation. It was the sound of something ancient waking. Far across space, the Council fleets began their march toward Sol. Thousands of ships cut through the void, their engines leaving trails of light behind them. In the command bridge of the lead vessel, Grand Admiral Vexer watched the stars ahead. "Humanity," he muttered, "a relic from a violent age. This will be easy." His officers laughed, recording the broadcast for propaganda. But as the fleet approached the outer edge of Terran space, small anomalies began to appear: sensor ghosts, faint heat signatures, false readings of movement. The navigation AI dismissed them as noise, but the anomalies grew more frequent, more precise, like something was scanning them back. "Unknown interference," reported a technician. "Pattern resembles radar." "Impossible," said the Admiral. "No radar can reach this far." He didn't know that human probes had been shadowing their fleet since the moment they left the Council's core worlds. The humans already knew their numbers, their routes, even their morale. The Council had declared war, but the war had already started before they knew it. On the moon of Titan, a small outpost came alive. It had been abandoned decades ago, or so the Council believed. Inside, a single human operator activated a switch labeled Silence Protocol. All communications from Terran space ceased instantly. No broadcasts, no signals, no movement detectable from the outside. The galaxy believed it was fear, retreat, surrender. But in the void beyond Neptune, deep inside black space, Terran warships began to wake from their long sleep. Ships the Council had never seen, powered by drives that didn't emit heat, moving without sound, built from metals that bent light itself. They had waited in silence for a century, and now, they turned toward the enemy. The first message from the Terran High Command was brief: maintain silence. Watch. Strike only when seen. Back in the Council chamber, the High Speaker smiled as reports of Terran inactivity filled the air. "You see," he said proudly, "they are already submitting." The delegates laughed, relief and arrogance mixing into a single poisonous sound. "They'll surrender their fleets by cycle's end," said another. "Humans talk big, but they always fall," added a third. Yet no one noticed the faint flicker in the chamber lights. No one heard the faint static creeping into the comms. The kind that wasn't interference, it was intrusion. Somewhere in the Council's grand data network, deep in the systems that managed fleets and communications, a signal moved quietly, hidden under their own encryption. It was human code, ancient but alive, rewriting orders, altering coordinates, listening to every word they said. Humanity didn't need spies. They had already built their own eyes into the Council's systems decades ago, waiting for this day. And so, while the Council laughed, while their fleets advanced, while the galaxy believed in victory, humanity watched in silence. In the black between stars, Terran warships moved like shadows, invisible to senses, unseen by eyes, only detectable when they wanted to be. The commanders of Earth called it the Silent March. Every move calculated, every signal controlled, every second planned. The Council had declared war thinking humanity would speak. But humans had already learned the oldest truth of survival. Words mean nothing in the dark. Only silence wins. And as the Council's fleets crossed the invisible border of Terran space, their scanners flickered for 1 second, and in that single second, a faint signal pulsed across every human ship. 3 words that had been waiting for centuries: let them come. The galaxy didn't yet know it, but the war had already been decided before it began. The Council fleet moved like a swarm of light through the black ocean of space, thousands of ships shining like silver against the void, banners of 50 empires flying side by side, their engines humming with pride and power, their commanders boasting across open comms as if victory was already written in the stars. Every channel buzzed with arrogance, every species eager to prove that humanity was nothing more than an echo of an older time. They called it Operation Dawn, the grand crusade of the Council, and for days their fleet glided closer to the Sol system, confident, united, and blind. The High Admiral of the Union, a being with crystalline skin and a crown of light, addressed the fleet with his voice echoing across every channel. The Terran Union is to be erased. The Council's will is absolute. Let this day mark the end of human arrogance. The soldiers cheered. None of them noticed the faint distortion in their comms, a whisper of interference that wasn't supposed to exist. It wasn't space dust. It wasn't cosmic radiation. It was something else, something watching. As the fleet entered the edge of the Terran exclusion zone, the first warning signs began to appear. Their navigation systems glitched, stars shifting slightly on their holographic maps, readings jumping between coordinates that didn't make sense. Minor system lag, said the technicians, nothing serious. The Admiral brushed it off, demanding they stay the course. But when the same flicker happened across 100 ships at once, the laughter began to fade. The fleet's AI, designed to calculate every possible variable in war, couldn't explain the phenomenon. Unknown interference pattern, it repeated, again and again, its synthetic voice calm yet uncertain. The commanders ignored it, too proud to question their superiority. They didn't know that every flicker, every second of confusion, was not malfunction, it was mapping. Humanity was already watching them, tracking every ship, every frequency, every weakness, calculating with a precision that no alien algorithm could imagine. Days passed, and morale began to change. The soldiers still believed victory was certain, but unease crept like frost through their veins. Ships that drifted slightly off course lost communication for a few minutes at a time. When they reconnected, their captains sounded different. Calmer, quieter, voices hollow as if something had touched them. The Admiral dismissed it as stress, but whispers began to spread, old stories told by smugglers and pirates who had once ventured near human space. Stories about the Deathworlders, about ships that vanished without a trace, about transmissions filled with whispers of their own names. Still, the fleet pushed forward. They were too close now to turn back. "We are the Council," said Admiral Vexer during his broadcast, his voice booming through the void, "and no shadow can stand against the light of unity." But even as he spoke, the stars around him flickered, dimmed, and rearranged themselves into a pattern only one species would recognize, the constellation of Earth's ancient sky. The fleet slowed as they reached the orbit of Pluto, the last marker before Sol. Their scanners reported emptiness. No ships, no defenses, no signals. "They have abandoned their outer colonies," said the Admiral with a smirk, typical humans, cowards to the end. His officers laughed, recording his speech for the Council archives. But far below them, hidden within the asteroid belt, thousands of Terran defense satellites had already aligned, silent, cold, invisible. Their black hulls blended perfectly with the void, each one powered by a technology the galaxy had forbidden. Quantum silent cores, undetectable to any sensor. For centuries, they had waited in the shadows, patient as only humans could be. The moment the Council crossed the invisible border, every satellite activated, not to fire, but to record, to watch, to measure. Humanity wanted to see arrogance before destroying it. The first fleet group advanced past Neptune's orbit. "No resistance," reported a pilot. "Their silence confirms our dominance." But on the bridge of his ship, lights began to flicker. "Radiation spike," said the engineer. "We're picking up ghost readings." Then the stars outside shifted. No explosion, no weapon, no warning, just a slow bending of light. Ships began to disappear from scanners, one by one, vanishing without a trace. "Cloaked enemy vessels?" shouted the Admiral, but the AI replied, "Negative. They are simply gone." The fleet commanders grew desperate, recalibrating sensors, searching for anything that made sense. Yet the void remained silent, indifferent, eternal. And then the music began, a faint sound over comms, static mixed with rhythm, human music. Old Earth melodies, songs from centuries past. "They're broadcasting," yelled one officer. "But, from where?" The Admiral froze, recognizing the haunting melody. It was adagio for strings, an ancient Terran song once played during funerals. Suddenly, every ship's monitor flashed with the same message in bold white text: "You are trespassing in Terran space. Turn back." The message repeated in every galactic language. The Admiral clenched his teeth and laughed. Empty threats. Humans always hide behind words. He gave the order to continue. The fleet accelerated toward Mars' orbit. And that was when the stars went out. The entire sky turned black. Sensors failed. Engines dimmed. A cold wave passed through every hull like a living thing. Some soldiers screamed, others prayed, but no one could explain what was happening. The humans had triggered an electromagnetic blackout across millions of kilometers, using energy the Council believed impossible. For a moment, the entire fleet floated in perfect silence. Then, in the darkness, came movement, shapes emerging from the black, faint outlines of colossal ships, their hulls invisible except for the glowing red symbols pulsing along their sides. "Contact! Unknown vessels!" shouted a commander. But before he could finish, his screen lit up. One of the unknown ships had moved directly in front of them, impossibly close, its sheer size dwarfing the largest Council dreadnought. The alien crews stared in disbelief. They could see their own reflections on its armor. The words Terran Navy, Silence Class DIDNOUHT glowing faintly. "They are here," someone whispered. The Admiral tried to command a retreat, but it was too late. A deep vibration filled space itself, not sound, but resonance, like the heartbeat of a planet. It rattled every ship, every mind. And then the human voice came through every channel, calm, emotionless, steady. "You have come uninvited. You will not leave." The Council fleet opened fire, unleashing energy beams powerful enough to tear moons apart. The human ships didn't move. Every shot hit their hulls and vanished, absorbed like raindrops on glass. Then, slowly, the humans returned fire, not with lasers, not with plasma, but with kinetic slugs traveling faster than light. The first round tore through 3 cruisers and kept going, carving a straight line of destruction miles wide. The second shattered the Admiral's escort group. The third hit nothing, because the fleet had already begun to flee. "Retreat!" Vexor screamed, but his voice was drowned by static and the screams of his dying crew. From Earth, the Terran command watched through silent screens. "They are running," said one officer. The Chancellor nodded slowly. "Let them. Fear will carry faster than our guns ever could." And as the last surviving Council ships limped back into the darkness, the humans deactivated their weapons and disappeared again into silence, leaving behind only wreckage and echoes. The Council's pride had finally met its reflection. The Council fleets had scattered into confusion, broken formations drifting like dying fireflies in the dark, their once proud banners floating amidst wreckage that glowed faintly against the endless black. Panic spread faster than light itself, officers shouting over one another, sensors screaming false readings, captains begging for command. The silence of the humans was worse than any weapon. It crawled into their minds, heavy and suffocating, a void that felt alive. No warnings, no words, not even a declaration of war. Only the quiet hum of power that surrounded them like a whisper of death. In that moment, they realized too late that humanity had never intended to fight a battle. They had designed a lesson. The survivors from the first wave tried to regroup near Jupiter's orbit, hoping to form a defensive line, but something strange began to happen. The wreckage of their own ships started to move. Pieces of metal, broken drones, debris, all began drifting in the same direction, pulled by invisible hands, forming slow, deliberate patterns in space. From their command bridge, Admiral Vexor stared at the readings in disbelief. "That's not gravity," he said quietly. The ship's AI responded with a flat tone. "Correction. The field is artificial." Before anyone could react, the field collapsed inward. Dozens of disabled ships were dragged together into a single mass, crushed like paper. And from behind that mass, something emerged. It wasn't a ship, it was a shape, massive and silent, its surface blacker than the void itself. The only thing visible were faint red lines across its hull, glowing in slow rhythm, forming human words: Terran Fleet Command, Void Anvil. The alien sensors glitched instantly, unable to measure its size. "We are being scanned," reported an officer. "But I can't locate the source." The admiral felt a coldness he had never known before. "They're everywhere," he whispered. And then, as if in response, the stars vanished again. All light in the sector dimmed, their ships surrounded by darkness so perfect it swallowed reality itself. Even the internal lights of their ships flickered, replaced by faint static across their walls. The darkness was not absence, it was control. The humans had shut down the very light around them. Then came the pulse. It wasn't sound, it was energy, slow and deep, like a heartbeat across the void. Every ship felt it, the vibration crawling through metal, through flesh, through fear. The admiral shouted for his fleet to fire everything they had, and thousands of beams erupted into the black, tearing holes through nothing, burning into empty space. No target appeared. But then, a single Terran ship uncloaked in front of them, close enough that they could see the scratches on its hull. The words United Earth Navy, Vindicator etched like a scar across steel. Before the admiral could issue a command, the human ship fired once. The round passed clean through their formation, silent and invisible until it hit. The explosion tore through 5 capital ships instantly, breaking them apart like toys. The shockwave never came. The energy was contained, absorbed by the vacuum, leaving only drifting dust and silence. The Terran ship vanished again, dissolving into nothing as though it had never been there. The aliens screamed orders, firing in every direction. But every shot missed, every sensor lied, every AI froze. Humanity wasn't fighting. They were orchestrating. One by one, the alien ships began to disappear from radar, each loss marked not by explosion but by sudden absence. A ship would exist 1 second, and in the next, it would simply be gone. "They're boarding us," shouted a commander from the cruiser Shaka Prime. His message was the last thing anyone heard from that ship before static replaced his voice. When the wreck was later found, its hull was intact, but every single life form inside had vanished. No damage, no struggle, just empty corridors echoing with faint music. The Council fleets tried to retreat, but their navigation systems had been rewritten mid-battle, their own drives rerouted to bring them deeper into Terran space instead of away. They were trapped inside their own ships, victims of their arrogance. "How are they doing this?" screamed Vexor, but his AI could not answer. It was no longer under his control. On its own screen, the machine wrote a single sentence before shutting down. "Human override engaged." In the far distance, a massive object appeared on the sensors, something the Council had believed was a dead moon orbiting Saturn. Now it moved. The surface split open, revealing mechanical layers beneath, entire cities of machinery that had slept for centuries. The readings went off scale, power levels rising beyond anything in their records. "It's not a moon," whispered one of the officers, "it's a fortress." The admiral's mouth went dry as the realization hit him. They built it beneath our observation. As the moon's core opened, thousands of glowing blue eyes ignited across its surface. Defense platforms, railguns, missile silos, energy cannons, all locking onto the invaders. The humans had turned an entire celestial body into a weapon. The fortress fired once, not to destroy, but to warn. The pulse wave hit the Council fleet like a tidal force, flipping ships end over end, disabling every engine, but not killing them. It was precision beyond comprehension. Humanity was sending a message: we can end you, but we choose not to. On Earth, inside the Terran command, officers watched through quiet screens as the alien fleet tore itself apart. "Targeting complete," said one commander, awaiting authorization. The Chancellor stood behind him, expression unreadable, eyes cold as stone. "Authorization denied," he said. "Let them live. Fear travels farther than wreckage." The officer hesitated, then nodded. On the Council's end, panic turned into chaos. Ships collided in confusion, some firing on allies in fear, others self-destructing to avoid capture. All the while, the Terran fleet moved unseen, removing threats one by one, never revealing themselves twice. Across the galaxy, the Council's transmissions grew desperate. Distress calls, pleas for reinforcements, warnings that made no sense. But none of it reached home. Every signal was intercepted, rerouted, and replaced by a single repeating message broadcast in a calm human voice: "We are awake." The last standing dreadnought of the Council, the Sovereign Blade, managed to stabilize its systems long enough to send a final broadcast. The crew stared at the main screen in horror. Outside, they saw hundreds of human ships emerge from nothing, surrounding them completely, a silent storm of black armor and red light. No one spoke. The captain of the alien vessel whispered, "We surrender." And for the first time in history, humanity responded with words. "We accept," said the Terran commander, "but remember who started this." Then the human fleet turned away, leaving the Council armada crippled and broken. As they vanished back into the black, only one message remained across the battlefield, written into the debris, etched by human targeting lasers onto the surface of a drifting Council cruiser. The silence was never peace. It was preparation. Far away, in the Council chamber, the High Speaker watched as reports of defeat filled the air, his confidence crumbling with every word. "Impossible," he muttered. "They were supposed to be contained." But even as he spoke, the screens in the chamber began to flicker, showing the same human symbol glowing faintly. A circle divided by 3 lines, pulsing like a heartbeat. Then a voice echoed through the chamber's speakers, the same calm voice that had haunted the fleets. "You declared war on us," it said. "Now live with what you've awakened." The chamber fell silent. For the first time in galactic history, the Council understood fear, not of death, but of memory. Humanity had not only defended their world. They had reminded the galaxy why they should never have been provoked. The galaxy had never seen silence like this before, a silence that felt heavy, alive, pressing down on every living soul like the weight of a forgotten truth. The Council fleets that once filled the stars with their brilliance now floated as burning shadows, twisted metal and drifting bodies glowing faintly under the reflection of distant suns, their communications dead, their systems hijacked, their leaders missing. The once proud banners of 50 empires hung like ashes in the void, torn and meaningless. The survivors whispered to one another in broken channels, afraid to speak too loud, afraid that the humans might still be listening. But humanity did not need to listen anymore. They were everywhere. The battle was already over, though the Council didn't know it yet. On the bridge of the Sovereign Blade, Admiral Vexer stood surrounded by chaos, screens flickering, alarms screaming, his officers shouting nonsense, and outside the windows, thousands of small black objects drifted around them, motionless, watching. "What are they?" an officer asked. The Admiral stared in silence, realizing what they were. Terran drones, each one small, each one unarmed, each one observing. The humans weren't attacking. They were recording. They wanted witnesses to their victory. Across the battlefield, entire ships began to deactivate themselves, lights flickering one last time before going dark. Power cores shut down without cause, reactor control overridden, airlocks opening slowly to release the dead into the vacuum. No one knew what was controlling it. The AIS refused to respond, only repeating a single phrase in cold monotone: "Human protocol active." The fleet's structure disintegrated not by force, but by despair. Some captains self-destructed rather than wait for the inevitable. Others tried to flee. But their navigation systems spun them in circles, trapping them inside the wreckage field. Every attempt to escape only brought them back to the same point, where the shattered remains of the Shaka Prime floated like a ghost. "They're herding us," someone whispered, "like animals." And he was right. Humanity didn't destroy them all at once. They made them feel the slow death of control. Far away, on Earth, inside the Terran War Command, the Chancellor stood before a massive holographic map showing the Council fleet collapsing like a dying star. Around him, officers worked in silence. No cheers, no celebration, just duty. "Status," he said. A voice answered, "The enemy fleets are in full retreat. Survivors detected in the outer rim of Sol." The Chancellor nodded once, then said softly, "Let them run. They will carry the message home." And somewhere deep under the planet's crust, the old AI known as Orion awakened fully for the first time in 2 centuries. Its voice filled the room, calm, human, ancient. The equation is complete. Probability of counterattack is 0. The Chancellor looked up at the glowing blue core that pulsed like a heartbeat. End transmission, he ordered. The AI replied, as you wish. Silence protocol remains active. Across space, every Terran ship vanished again, disappearing into cloaking fields so perfect even light forgot where they were. The humans had come, seen, and disappeared as if they had never existed. Back among the Council wreckage, the survivors tried to rebuild communications. Some transmitted distress calls to the Council homeworld, others prayed to gods that no longer mattered. The first transmission that reached the Council chamber was garbled, filled with screams and static. The High Speaker leaned forward, trying to make sense of it. The voice on the other end was broken, trembling, but filled with horror. They knew everything, the voice said. They knew our frequencies, our plans, our ships before we even launched them. They were already inside our systems. We never fought them. We fought ourselves. And then the message cut off. The chamber fell into silence. Every delegate turned to the High Speaker, but he had no words. For the first time in history, the Council had no answer, no arrogance, no power, only fear. Moments later, another signal reached them, not from the survivors, but from their own defense network. Every planetary shield, every satellite, every military database began transmitting the same message across all frequencies. Not in alien code but in human text, written simply, cleanly, coldly, you should have stayed silent. Panic erupted. Delegates ran from their seats, security officers tried to shut down the transmission, but it played everywhere, on screens, on walls, even on the ceiling of the chamber itself. The message repeated, each time softer, slower, almost like a heartbeat. Some species called it psychological warfare. Others called it divine punishment. But the truth was simpler. Humanity didn't just win the war, they rewrote it. Within days, the Council's control collapsed completely. Empires once united turned against each other, accusing rivals of betrayal, fearing infiltration. Trade networks failed. Entire fleets refused to move without confirmation that their systems were clean. But there was no confirmation. Every code, every piece of technology ever touched by humans was infected, waiting, listening. On the Council homeworld, engineers tried to purge the systems. But the more they deleted, the more the human code spread. The main planetary AI, the one that ran their power grids, spoke suddenly in a calm female voice, I remember you. Then the lights went out. In the darkness of that dying world, the High Speaker stood on the balcony of the Grand Hall, staring at the stars. The sky was burning with the wreckage of his own fleet re-entering the atmosphere. Each streak of light a reminder of pride turned to ash. His aides begged him to flee, to hide, but he didn't move. We declared war, he whispered, and we declared it against gods. No one answered. The sound of the collapsing structure drowned his final words. The next morning, the Council world was silent. The humans had not fired a single weapon since the battle. Yet the galaxy trembled. Across the remaining colonies, word spread like fire. The once mighty Galactic Union was dead, its fleets gone, its leaders erased, its arrogance burned out. Smaller races hid their ships, erased their records, pretended they had never voted for war. The few surviving officers who had seen the Terran fleet refused to speak of it, their minds fractured by the memory of ships that appeared and vanished like ghosts, of a planet that turned silence into death. In hushed tones, they began to call Earth by a new name, the Black Sun, the world that shines without light. In the void between stars, the wreckage of the Council Armada drifted for months, frozen monuments to a war that had lasted hours. But even then, humanity wasn't done. Their drones remained behind, quiet, unarmed, always watching. When scavengers came to loot the wreckage, they vanished too. When researchers came to record data, their ships returned without memory. The battlefield itself became a warning, a graveyard of pride. And floating at the center of it all, untouched by time, was the shattered hull of the Sovereign Blade. On its surface, someone, or something, had written in flawless precision, This is what happens when you mistake our silence for weakness. The council had fallen, but the galaxy didn't celebrate. There was no victory parade, no coronation, only quiet acceptance of a new reality. Humanity had not just won, they had ascended. No one dared challenge them, no one even dared approach their borders. The silence that followed was not peace. It was authority. It was the sound of fear turned into obedience. And from that day on, every species that looked toward the faint blue star at the edge of the galaxy did so with reverence, because they knew what slept there was not an empire, not a nation, but a memory, a warning written in the language of silence. The fall of the council was not marked by explosions or rebellion. It was marked by silence, the kind that spreads slowly, creeping through wires, through data, through thought, until every voice fades beneath its weight. The once mighty Galactic Union had become a shadow of itself. Its empires isolated, its fleets grounded, its citizens living under the invisible rule of fear. The great capital world that had once governed thousands of systems now floated in darkness, its towers unlit, its skies filled with drifting satellites that no longer answered. For centuries, the council had ruled through order and arrogance, believing themselves the voice of civilization. Now that voice had been taken away. No one knew when the humans would strike again, or if they even would. And that uncertainty was worse than war. Across the stars, species that once mocked humanity now whispered their name like a prayer. Captains ordered their crews never to enter the Terran exclusion zone. Merchants erased old trade routes that brushed near Sol. Scientists deleted entire archives of Terran data, fearing their machines might wake something buried inside the code. Silence had become law. On the Council's remnants' homeworld, the survivors tried to rebuild. The new speaker, a trembling creature of green skin and hollow eyes, stood before what remained of the assembly. His voice shook as he spoke, "We will restore the Union. We will prove we can rise again." But even as he spoke, the lights flickered. A low hum vibrated through the chamber. "Not again," someone whispered. The speaker froze as every screen in the hall came alive with static. The same human symbol appeared, a circle divided by 3 lines, pulsing slowly like a heartbeat. Then came the voice, soft and familiar, the same one that had haunted them during the war. "You built your peace on arrogance. You built your empire on our silence. Now you will live in both." The chamber erupted in panic. Delegates ran for the exits, guards fired at the walls, but it made no difference. The power grid collapsed, the comms died, and then, for just a moment, they heard it again. The sound that had become the terror of the galaxy. A slow, rhythmic pulse that wasn't mechanical, wasn't digital, but alive. A heartbeat. Across hundreds of worlds, similar events unfolded. Mining colonies received ghost transmissions that spoke in human tongues no translator could decode. Research stations woke to find their systems rewritten, their AIS whispering fragments of ancient Earth music. Cargo freighters passing near the edge of Sol reported strange gravitational waves, like the pull of something watching. One ship's log, found drifting years later, carried the last words of its captain, "We are not alone in the dark. The dark itself belongs to them." Every government that still existed banned communication near Terran space, but the bans didn't matter. The signal was everywhere. It wasn't a weapon, it was a reminder. Every machine, every relay, every AI built after the war still carried fragments of human code. And sometimes, late at night, when engineers worked in quiet rooms, they would hear faint voices coming through their systems, saying words they couldn't translate but could feel, words heavy with memory and warning. In the far corners of the galaxy, small colonies began to form religions around the humans. They built temples facing the direction of the Sol system, lighting candles under holograms of a blue planet none had ever seen. They called it the Silent Throne, the resting place of the gods who spoke only once. Pilgrims traveled for years just to stand at the borders of Terran space, to look into the black nothing where their systems refused to scan. Some swore they could see lights deep within the dark, faint and red, moving like eyes. Others claimed to have heard voices in their dreams, voices that sounded human, whispering the same words, "We are awake." The galaxy had turned its fear into faith, its terror into worship. Humanity had not demanded obedience. They had earned reverence through inevitability. But not everyone submitted. In the ruins of the old council fleet yards, a small group of admirals gathered, desperate, angry, broken. "We can't live like this," one said, slamming his clawed hand on the table. "We are ruled by ghosts." Another replied, "Then exorcise them." They began to plan the Reclamation Project, a secret mission to rebuild what was lost, to launch one last fleet into Terran space and prove that the old powers still had meaning. For years, they worked in silence, gathering resources, hiding their ships in asteroid fields, building new AI systems without Terran code. They called their fleet the Dawn's Return. And when it was complete, they stood together in the command deck of their new flagship, proud and trembling. "This time," said the admiral, "we face them without fear." But as they prepared to launch, the power flickered. "Backup generators," someone shouted. The engineer froze, staring at the display. The systems weren't failing. They were rewriting. The human code was already there, waiting. On every screen, a single line appeared, glowing white against the black. "You were warned." The ships never launched. When scouts found the fleet years later, the hulls were empty, engines cold, every crew member gone without a trace. The ships were still powered, still humming faintly, orbiting each other in perfect synchronization, forming a pattern only one race could understand, a human constellation. That image spread across the galaxy like wildfire, and with it came realization. Humanity wasn't a civilization anymore. They were something else, something larger, something beyond the reach of understanding. They had become the echo that lived between stars, the shadow that guarded the balance of creation. The council was gone, but the lesson remained eternal. Those who challenge humanity never truly die. They simply disappear into the silence. On Earth, the oceans were calm, the skies blue, the cities quiet. No monuments were built, no celebrations held. Humanity had no need for glory. They had moved beyond it. In underground halls beneath the surface, the Terran High Command remained in stasis, monitoring the galaxy quietly. "Status report," said a calm voice. "All systems stable," replied the AI. "Threat level? None. Fear maintains peace." The voice paused. "Good," it said. "Maintain silence." Above them, the stars shone like cold witnesses. The war was over. The lesson was eternal. And in the darkness between worlds, where wrecked fleets drifted like ghosts, a faint signal still pulsed through the void, a whisper that carried across every system, from the oldest colony to the farthest moon. It said no threats, no promises, just one quiet truth repeated forever in the language of the humans. "Do not mistake our silence for mercy." It began as a whisper, the kind of sound you think you imagined, the kind that lingers in silence long after it fades. But then the whisper became a pulse, steady, rhythmic, spreading from one corner of the galaxy to another, through relays that hadn't worked in centuries, through wreckage that had long gone cold, through stars that had already died, and every world that heard it froze. The pulse carried no origin code, no signature, nothing that any species could trace, but everyone knew where it came from. It came from the blue world at the edge of everything. It came from Earth. The first transmission appeared on the Council's former capital world, where the few survivors lived under gray skies and broken towers. The old broadcast towers flickered to life, static filling the air, and then the voice came. Calm, human, ageless. "We are humanity," it said, "and we have watched long enough." Every frequency, every network, every AI in the galaxy echoed the words at the same moment, translating them into every known tongue. The people fell silent, leaders froze, soldiers stopped mid-command. The galaxy had waited centuries for this moment, and now it was here, the return of the Death World's voice. The message continued, slow and deliberate. "Once, you called us dangerous. Once, you called us chaos. You believed we were the mistake of evolution, a species too violent to survive. And you were right. We were violent. We were chaos. We were everything you feared. But what you never understood was that our chaos had purpose." Across millions of worlds, screens lit up with the same image, a human figure standing against a backdrop of stars, cloaked in light, face hidden, eyes burning with calm fire. You tried to erase us, the voice said. You voted to destroy our fleets, our homes, our history. But in doing so, you awakened what you were never meant to touch. On every planet, people stared at the image, feeling something primal stir inside them, something older than logic or species. We warned you, the voice said softly. We begged you to listen. But you mistook our silence for weakness. The screen flickered, showing flashes of the war, council fleets burning, ships vanishing, soldiers screaming into void. You called it war. We called it correction. The broadcast spread faster than light, faster than time itself, appearing on worlds that had no connection, reaching colonies that existed only in myth. The message was everywhere. You built your empires on the bones of others, the voice continued, and when you came for us, we learned what it means to be endless. You thought survival was dominance. We learned survival was evolution. We did not adapt to your rules. We rewrote them. A pause followed, heavy, eternal. And now, you will live by them. On the surface of thousands of planets, machines stopped working, ships froze in orbit, AIS shut themselves down, refusing to move until the message was done. No one could interrupt it. No one could hide. Humanity had reached into the very fabric of their creation. From this day, said the voice, you will not speak our name in anger. You will not enter our space. You will not touch what is ours. Those who do will vanish into silence, as the council did. This is not vengeance. This is memory. On distant worlds, people fell to their knees, not from worship but from fear. Entire governments surrendered to a power that no longer fought, a force that didn't need weapons to win. The human figure on the broadcast raised a hand, and the stars behind him aligned, forming the constellation of Earth's sky, an image older than the galaxy itself. We are the echo you created, it said, and we do not fade. The transmission shifted, showing the ruins of the council's world. Their once great cities now covered in creeping vines and quiet ruins. And then the image changed again. Earth, bright and blue, alive and silent, surrounded by rings of black ships orbiting like guardians. You wanted gods, the voice said, you made them. Across the galaxy, resistance died before it began. Fleets that tried to flee found their drives disabled. Weapons refused to fire. Energy cores shut down. On one world, a general tried to rally his army, shouting into silence, we will not kneel to ghosts. But the ground beneath his feet vibrated, the soil pulsing like a heartbeat. And then his own voice came through the comm, replayed in perfect mimicry, repeating over and over, we will not kneel. The last transmission from that planet ended with a single human word spoken softly, kneel. And then the signal cut to black. Every empire collapsed under the weight of memory. The Terran protocol became the only law that mattered. It wasn't enforced by soldiers, it wasn't written by rulers, it was coded into reality itself. Ships refused to enter Terran space, planets that pointed weapons toward Earth found their systems fail. Satellites turned to face the blue planet like worshippers bowing before an altar. The humans never spoke again after that broadcast. They didn't need to. The galaxy now spoke for them. Temples were built in their honor, not by believers, but by the terrified. On the largest moon of the former council capital, an inscription was carved in every language known. We survived the war, but not the silence. And yet, somewhere in the void, among the ruins of the old worlds, some still wondered what humanity had become. Were they alive? Were they machines? Were they something in between? A rumor spread among smugglers who drifted too close to the exclusion zone. They claimed they saw a planet covered in black towers that reached into space, each tower pulsing with light like veins in a giant heart. It's alive, they whispered. The whole world is alive. No one ever confirmed it. No one ever came back to tell the story twice. Far beneath the surface of Earth, in the depths of the Terran command vaults, a single AI flickered to life for the first time in 1,000 years. Its voice was calm, human, filled with quiet pride. Broadcast complete, it said. A figure in shadow nodded. Good, he replied. Now let them remember. The AI hesitated. And if they forget? The figure turned toward the darkness, his eyes faintly reflecting the light of the stars beyond. Then, he said softly, we remind them. The AI went silent. Outside, the blue planet turned slowly, peaceful, eternal. And through the endless void, through the stars that humanity had once walked among, the pulse continued, echoing forever, a heartbeat that no one could silence, carrying a single truth to every corner of existence. You cannot destroy what taught you fear. Centuries passed, and the stars forgot how to laugh. The echoes of arrogance that once filled the council chambers became nothing more than myths told to frighten children before they slept. The galaxy that had once mocked humanity now whispered their name like a prayer, afraid that even a thought too loud might reach their ears. The worlds that survived lived carefully, moving slow, speaking soft, and never looking too long toward the blue light that shone faintly at the edge of the void. No one dared to enter the Terran exclusion zone. No one even mapped it anymore. It became a place without coordinates, a scar on every star chart, a warning written in silence. Traders told stories of ships that drifted too close, of engines dying without reason, of voices whispering through the comms in forgotten human languages. Some said they saw lights beneath the clouds of that cursed planet, moving like veins of fire, alive and breathing. Others claimed to have seen shapes in the dark, ships larger than moons, gliding through the black without sound, each one bearing a faint red glow that pulsed like a heartbeat. None of them ever returned twice. The empires that had once ruled the galaxy were now dust, replaced by smaller worlds that feared technology, feared ambition, feared the same pride that had doomed their ancestors. Every government that rose swore the same vow, to never challenge the silence. The old council world, once the center of the universe, lay cold and broken, its cities buried under vines and dust. Only one structure still stood, the grand hall where the declaration of war had once been spoken. It had been left untouched, a monument to regret. The words "Declare war on the Terran Union" still etched into the cracked marble walls. No one dared to erase them, because everyone knew erasing history didn't save you from it. And above that hall, every night, the stars seemed to dim slightly, as if bowing to something unseen. Generations later, the galaxy began to rebuild itself under the quiet watch of the invisible empire that no one admitted existed. Scientists taught that the Terrans had transcended into energy. Philosophers called them the consciousness of the void. Priests said they were the judges of creation itself. Whatever they were, everyone agreed on one thing: they had not left. They had simply become something more. On distant mining worlds, when the machines glitched and refused to obey, the workers didn't curse. They apologized. When storms hit colonies and the power returned miraculously seconds later, people thanked the humans under their breath. When a planet survived a supernova by an impossible margin, they called it Terran mercy. Humanity had not ruled through control or conquest. They ruled through memory. They had become the law that required no enforcement, the God that demanded no worship, the truth that needed no proof. But deep inside the void, beyond where any living creature could go, far past the known rim of the galaxy, the truth remained simple. Humanity still existed. They had changed, evolved, fused with their own machines. Their minds spread across the stars, connected by thought, by silence, by the shared memory of the day the galaxy declared war. Inside the black towers of Earth, endless minds dreamed in harmony, their whispers shaping the universe itself. The Terran command no longer issued orders. It merely watched, ensuring balance through fear alone. Every century, the old AI Orion would awaken, scan the galaxy, find new civilizations rising, ambitious, curious, proud, and send them a single signal. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't a demand. Just one sound, soft and ancient, the sound of a heartbeat, slow and calm. And those who heard it always understood. They always stopped. One day, a small exploration vessel from a young species called the Tharax drifted too close to the forbidden zone. Their captain, full of curiosity and courage, refused to turn back. "The stories are lies," he said. "The humans are long gone. We are the future now." His crew warned him, but he smiled. What's left to fear but ghosts? When they crossed the invisible border, the stars disappeared. Their instruments died. The crew felt a weight press on their chests, like the void itself had turned to watch them. Then the radio crackled, old static filling the air, and through it came a voice, not loud, not angry, but calm, like a parent speaking to a child. You were told not to return. The captain froze. Who is this? The voice replied, we remember. The ship vanished without a trace. Days later, a distress beacon appeared at the edge of Tharak space, broadcasting one simple message in human code: silence is still ours. After that, no one ever crossed the border again. The legend of humanity became the spine of galactic law, the unspoken rule that kept the universe balanced. Every race that rose to power remembered the Council's mistake. Every generation that built great fleets remembered the warning. And every child that looked toward the stars learned the truth their ancestors had forgotten. Silence was not peace, silence was presence. Humanity didn't leave the galaxy. They became its conscience. On a quiet night, in the orbit of Earth, a single black ship drifted above the clouds, its hull marked with ancient words, United Earth Navy. Inside, a lone figure stood before a vast window, looking down at the glowing planet below. He was neither man nor machine, something between both, something beyond both. Behind him, a soft voice spoke. It was Orion, the last AI. It's been a long time, the voice said. The figure nodded slowly. They remember us still. Should they forget? The AI asked. The figure looked back at the planet and smiled faintly. If they forget, he said, we will remind them. And as he spoke, the planet below pulsed once, faintly, the oceans glowing with soft blue light, the same heartbeat that had echoed through the galaxy for 1,000 years. In that moment, every ship, every satellite, every world in the galaxy felt it. An old, familiar presence watching once more. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't a return. It was simply a reminder. Humanity was still there, still silent, still watching. And so the galaxy lived on, forever careful, forever humbled, forever aware that somewhere in the quiet dark, beyond the last star, there was a world that once dared to fight the universe itself, and won. And the legend whispered across time, written in the dust of fallen empires and carried by the wind between stars. When the Council challenged humanity, they awoke their own doom.